All right, welcome to the live stream. If you're just now joining, and if you're watching the replay, welcome to you as well. So this is a series of live streams that we're calling our Shelter in Place CP drawing streams, and we've been doing some um, portrait features, and we're working on hair right now on this one. So this is our third installment for this particular hair that we're working on. All right. Make sure we're online here. Looks like we are. Looks like Twitter might be having a problem. We stream this to 3 different services at one time. Thanks to Restream.io. We stream to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All right, I want to sharpen just a couple of pencils here. All right. So what I did, let me know if you're able to hear me okay and see the stream. Hey, Harry, how are you? So good to see you over here. All right, so what I did was, you may notice it looks a little bit different than it did last night. And what I did, hey, Linda, how are you? Linda and Harry both over there on Facebook Live. See if I can make this window a little bit smaller, maybe. Doesn't want to cooperate. Okay, that's fine. What I did was I used some pan pastel on the background, and then put a little bit of pan pastel on the skin area as well. So just so that we could have some context with what we're working on. All right. So I think when we left off last time, we were floating back and forth. Hey, Cheryl, how are you? Good to see you over here as well. We were floating back and forth between Sepia Red and Merlot, I believe. And I think we might have been, let's see. That's probably about it. I think what we'll do, though, is work in that middle value a little bit right now. So I'm going to use brown ochre. So this is the Derwent Lightfast brown ochre. I'm going to go ahead and sharpen that one. Hey, Ramona, thanks for joining. Ramona's also over there on Facebook. So if anyone's able to see us on YouTube, let me know. I want to know if we're actually streaming over there. All right, as always, let me know if my head gets in the stream. I don't like that, but I like to have this overhead view for you all, because I think that it, for me at least, when I'm watching something, I like to see, what it is looking like straight down without any distortions. Ramona said she was here first. So did you hear that, Harry? Harry's often first, so might be a battle going on there. Okay. So I want to start in a lot of the dark areas and pull away from those dark areas with this brown ochre, because it's a middle value, and I'm going to be able to use that dark area to my advantage by spreading it out just a little bit when I do that. The other thing that's working in our advantage, obviously, is I got to be careful not to get that pan pastel in my hand. The other thing working in our advantage is the Stonehenge cream colored paper. That's working really well for us also. Okay. Some of the areas we won't even have to use a lighter color in because we've gone dark enough, and so that will work just fine. Oh, there you go. Well, good deal. Yeah, you are on YouTube live over there. Thanks for joining, Brenda. Okay. So getting up here by these glasses here. Now, if you're watching it and you're looking at that, you're thinking, well, it doesn't look like he's doing anything. Let me zoom in just a little bit here. And that's because this is one of the midtones. And so really what we're trying to accomplish here is making some sense out of some of the dark areas and the lighter areas. So we're giving it some context by adding a mid-range in our values that will be very, very subtle. So we're not looking for drastic changes with a mid-tone color and value. But if you'll notice, I'll zoom in just a little bit and I'll show a little bit more about what I'm talking about, be a little more specific. And what I'm going to do before I do that is go ahead and sharpen both of these guys. That way, one gets dull, I can just switch over to the other one, not waste a lot of time. All right. Okay. So let's zoom in here just a little bit. And again, if you're interested in the reference, you can go over to sharpenedartist.com/livestreams and download it. Scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, and it would be the fourth live stream download. Okay, so here we are. So in this area, I've got this dark tone right here because I use that sepia red, and I can use this sort of backwards stroke here and push all of this out of here. A lot of times I get that question, what do you mean by push? So I'm starting in a dark area, and then I am using that mid-range pencil, and in this case it's this brown ochre, and I'm lengthening this value by adding more context to it. So it abruptly stopped, right? It was a dark value, and then it stopped when we got close to where the highlight of this section of hair is. But if I add, and I can come back this way too, if I add this middle value, then I've increased this dark value, and I've created more of a tapered gradient, which is what we really want. It's also time to get a little more picky and look at some of the texture on the surface and make sure that, you know, like we talked about last evening, that we're not getting some of those, you know, weird looking lines that will happen if you rake your pencil across the surface too fast. So Ramona has got a request there for dark hair next. That's an interesting idea. Maybe I'll consider that. Okay, let's go in this direction over here. All right. I want to make sure I'm still in the frame. Looks like I am, so back out just a little bit there. Okay, now I want this pencil to be very, very sharp, and I'm going to go very, very slow to be very deliberate about some of this, because we're getting close to some areas where we want some detail, and so I want to make sure that I'm directing these strokes now, and I'm still thinking about this as a section of hair. I'm not thinking about individual strands. Like we mentioned before, that would spell disaster, really. But at the same time, there are sections of hair. There are areas that are going in the same direction with minor, subtle differences in direction. But if I start wanting to draw all of those, that will happen accidentally, that you'll start drawing some of the different directions. But if I start deliberately trying to, make these little triangles that I see here and there, then it's likely that I will make the hair look plastic. It'll look like plastic, or like I'm drawing straw, like something that is real odd and not hair. Okay, so now let's go grab this. Make sure this is sharp enough. Get this ruby earth here. A few areas where we've got some darker tones right in there. Hey, Maria. Maria's joining us over there on Facebook Live. And Hugh, hello to you as well. And thank you for the comment over there on YouTube Live. All right. So I'll lay that one aside for a moment. So we've worked a lot in this area. And I want to grab this sepia red and make sure that this is still darker right over here. That needs to be a little bit sharper. And I want a little bit of an edge over here. There we go. Okay. Now I want to come back from the top over there, the other direction. And it seems like we were Seems like I was using a different sepia, but I guess I wasn't. Okay. I have some blue up here, so I want to be sure that I start in that area. And I don't get in a hurry either. I'll zoom back out just a little bit. But I want to think about this section and where things will be connecting over there. So now at this point I can push some of these sections just a little bit. I can push them down into an area and go more diagonal like I did here, rather than just this straight sweeping across, because I'm getting to that point where I can add some of those details. Early on, if I did that, then I would start having some problems. Okay, so out. You see, one thing we talked about, I think it was last night, is, it looks like, without any disrespect, it looks like that maybe she needs to get the dye job done again, and there's some darker roots than what we really want to depict here. And so what I'm going to do then is include more of this brown ochre on the very edge of where we created our darkest value, and then lengthen that area so that it looks like it's part of that dark area, and then it is moving into the highest spot in this section, which creates the light reflection and gives us that that highlight. Okay, so over here I noticed we need this to be a little bit darker over here. And let's switch back over to my sepia red. Okay. So with studies, when you're doing a study, you have to make some decisions about why you're doing it. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you practicing colors? Are you practicing values? Maybe it's all of those things. Are you just practicing drawing hair? Are you practicing, the layering process? Whatever it is, you have to make that decision ahead of time so you know what you're trying to accomplish. What is it you're wanting to get out of it? And That's, I mean, in IT, that's something that, in my background, that's the thing I always think about is um, that's your proof of concept. Then if you do something a little bit smaller, a smaller scale, then you're proving out what you're trying to accomplish. And you don't have to make a study be all about every single thing, though. Um, Otherwise, it's a drawing, right? It's a completed piece. It's not really a study if you're doing that. Okay. So now let's see. That's still up here. I guess I'm getting to the top of the frame. Let me wrong way. Let me go back just a little bit. I felt like we covered up most of that blue last night, but I guess we didn't. Okay. Now we can add this lighter color. Brown Ochre again by Derwent Lightfast. See, when you look at the reference, we're seeing a very stark contrast, I believe. That's the way I'm interpreting it, between some of the dark areas next to the scalp and where the shine of the hair is, and the pinnacle of that curve of the hair sections. And I want to create more of a subtle value gradation between where the dark areas are and the highlights are in each section. And so with that, I'm going to be using, more of those middle values to create that. Okay. All right, so come back up here. I put that pan pastel on the back of everything. Now I'm getting it on my hand on that background. So just speed things up and get some context to what we're doing. I should really put glassine down so that I don't smudge that around. I just used a paper towel, though. Hopefully that got rid of it. Okay, so right in here, this is a miniature version of what we're actually going to be doing right over here. So, really hard to get in there. We can use this Naples right in here. To show that area as being shiny. And then, because that's a little bit too yellow for my taste, we can use some white on top of that. And that should calm that down just a little bit. And make it not quite as yellow, and actually give us more of a blonde color. And it's all about that value difference between the dark areas and the light areas. So come back in here. Not blue. What was I going to use? I was going to use it sepia red. And I can put some more of that dark area right in here. Just very small amount, but enough to describe this area as being darker. And then right up there on top. I feel like I'm reaching over with my hand. I'm reaching over this huge chasm here where I've got pan pastel. It's a weird feeling. Okay. There we go. Okay, I can pull this back a little bit more into this highlight. So I always want to err on the side of having more of my bright area larger than, I want to be more liberal with my bright area than I do, especially on Stonehenge paper, than I do with my dark area. Because I can get that back. I can get that, I can take the dark area and draw over the light area. But I'm going to have more trouble doing it the opposite way, the other direction. Okay, and this is the part where it starts to come back in this backward direction. Here we go. Do need just a little more of that dark indigo down here. Okay. Now, use that oyster just a little bit in there. Okay. Now let's look at this. So we use that Naples over here. But I'm going to put this white up on top of it. So remember we started out with Chinese white from the Derwent drawing line. And we reserved some of this area just in case we needed it later on to go backwards, go in the other direction. But then I came back in here and last night I put some of the Naples yellow in here. It's a little bit too bright for the most part, especially in the areas where we've got some lighter blonde right in there. All right, I don't know that we put any of this up here, but we can do that now. And then we'll also come back in there with that brown ochre. But this tapers much quicker up here than it does down here, right? I mean, it's a shorter gradient. Okay. Come back in there now with that brown ochre. I'm noticing I need to be a little bit slower with this particular pencil. Now, I may not even see this edge as being something that is so much darker than everything else. But it's still, in my opinion, more convincing if I make that edge just a little bit darker than everything else. I see it as being slightly darker in certain areas there. But even if our photo didn't do that, it would still make more sense because that's logical to have that edge darker. Because it's going away from our view, so that's going to make more sense. And that seems to be a little dull. There we go. Okay. Hey, Carol. Yes, better late than never. That's right. Carol's watching over there on YouTube Live. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so I'm going to define some of this hair back here just a little bit, only because I'm going to lose it if I don't. Not mentally, I'll just lose this hair if I don't. There we go. All right, put some more of that brown ochre in there. Now this is where colored pencil gets its reputation for being slow. Oh, can you not hear me at all? Is it quieter than normal? Or am I just talking soft? Sorry about that if I am. I haven't been talking a whole lot. I've been concentrating right in here. Just let me know, Carol, if that sounds any better or not. What I was going to say, though, is that this is where colored pencil gets its reputation for being very slow. That is because this is when it just kind of grinds to a halt, and you have to take your time and build up some of this very, very slowly. Otherwise, if you get in a hurry in this spot, when you're in this particular spot in the drawing, then this is where it can start to look like, a Crayola crayon piece if you're not careful. And it's really the last thing that we want. It's going to take some time to build up some of these layers with an even distribution. Some of those initial layers, and I rushed it a little bit on this one, on some of those initial layers, only because it's a study, a demonstration. But if I was going to do this as a commission piece, and or enter it into a contest or something like that, I would take my time and think about all of these layers underneath needing to be very evenly distributed and smaller strokes. Okay. But what I really love is the way that this brown ochre influences that color of the sepia red underneath. But the thing I'm having to be careful about is to not allow it to start to get too grainy in that area. It's a very small drawing, so I have to I have to watch what the overall look and feel of the surface is. What is it communicating? And if I go too fast, then I'm going to destroy some of that. Okay. So right in here, let's see. Put a little bit this side as this lengthens and works its way into that highlight right there. There we go. So Kiyomi, if I pronounce that correctly, is asking what paper I'm using for the demo. This is Stonehenge paper. It's the cream color Stonehenge is what I'm on. One of the biggest takeaways I hope that you're getting out of this is that blonde hair often has a lot of red in it, and not to use yellow, not much yellow if you're using it at all. I prefer like that Naples if you're going to be using something that you would qualify as yellow. I'm thinking more in the direction of ochres, some muted ochres. Yeah, so Carol's asking about the background. Yeah, I talked about that a moment ago, and that is pastel. So I put some pan pastel in there just so we could get some context of what we're looking at here and have some contrast in there. All right. What am I looking for? Here it is. Kiyomi. Okay, there we go. Thanks for the pronunciation guide there. Okay. Kiyomi. I hope I pronounced that right. All right. So most of this, and if we started on white paper, then we would have some slightly different sets of rules that we would follow, right? And we would have to start using the dark values even in the highlights. And what this paper allowed us to do is to speed it up and not worry about the color of everything in the highlights. So we had just had to look at the darker values and focus on those primarily. And then we would worry about those lighter values secondarily, or as we started creating the curve and the dimension with the dark values on the edges of each of the sections of hair. And now, so here's some differences right in here. Like I've got this little bit of bun, I'm calling it, I don't know what it is, this section of hair. I've got a darker area right down here that I'm seeing, and I started kind of drawing that up here, but I sort of made a decision earlier to put it down here. And then I've got this section right in here over here. So I just want to kind of identify some of those things. I mean, they're abstract images, yes, but you also want to kind of know where you are in the process and what you're looking at, because you can kind of get lost in all of those details and start drawing something that doesn't represent hair at all, because you may be forgetting where you are in the process and what's connected to what. I mean, all of this hair up here has to have a landing spot, right? It's not just out here somewhere. It's this area over here is connected to this area over here. Same way with everything over here at the scalp has to be connected over here. Okay, so now I can darken all of this on this side. The tendency is to start going fast and to start thinking, oh, okay, now I know what I'm doing over here, and then start moving your pencil very fast. And I want to make sure I don't do that. Okay. Switch pencils here. So Sergi Man's asking, do I prefer drawing straight hair or wavy or curly hair? Probably straight hair, because I think it would be faster. I don't enjoy drawing hair. I'm sorry. I wish I did enjoy it. I really don't. It's it's okay. I'll get through it, but it's I like it when it's done. I'll put it that way. I like it once it's done. I'm like, okay, I'm finally done with that. But it's not my favorite part of a portrait. All right. Now this is an interesting spot right here. This portion of the hair, it to me, I interpret that as being bright all the way to this section where it's tucked under. But in a drawing, it's not always going to communicate that well. Oh yeah, Sergi Man's talking about the lips being his least favorite. Yeah, they can be very challenging as well. All right. So I have to make a decision here. Am I going to make this darker? And I could, and it is darker. But I think that it's always more convincing if something is tucking under something else, then you could always make that area darker as well. There needs to be some kind of separation in the values. Oh, Sergi Man likes drawing hair. That's interesting. I don't hate it as much as I used to. I don't know that I would say I hate it, but it's not my favorite. I don't think there's anything in drawing that I hate. Yeah, fur is like hair. That's right, Carol. Yeah, when I've done pet commissions, um, it's a kind of a different thing, though. I mean, it's still hair, but uh, like cats in particular, unless it's, I guess, a long-haired cat. But cats are, more like short hair, so it's not something that is usually doesn't take as much time. You just have to be careful about the stroke, the direction of the stroke. Yeah, Sergi Man's saying there's one thing that he hates in drawing. That's indecisive customers. Yeah, that's for sure. Okay. So let's grab. I can't believe that it's been this long already. You know, the tendency, especially when we're new to this medium colored pencil, is to say, okay, I'm done enough. That's enough. I've had enough of that. I'm just going to move along, and I'm not going to finish this entire. It's good enough. Um, but we're not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And so we're going to keep working on this because we're about 50% of the way done. And you short you short yourself. You know, you're cheating yourself when you do that. When you decide, okay, I'm just not going to finish it. I'm going to just pretend like I did everything else that I needed to do. Um, there we go. So Sergio Man is asking, did you take in consideration doing a graphite shelter in place? No, I haven't thought about that. To be honest, no, I haven't. All right. Maybe I'll think about that. I'm wondering how much longer the shelter in place is going to go on in certain parts. I don't know. They're starting to open back up certain stores around me. So I want to show something here where we can do this, and I want to keep this as steady as possible. Now this is more proof of concept here. Whoops. Got out of my hand there for a moment. So made this very ugly mark because of just not being real steady with it. But what I can do, since I use that eraser in that spot, I can draw around it and fill in some of those areas. Now, this area right here I did not mean to do, so I can fill that back in. Okay, so that's one pass at it. So the next thing I can do is grab this. I'll show you here. And get rid of that one. Can pull this out. Get a little more to work with right there. And then sharpen that up a little bit. So I've got a little tiny point on it. All right, I've got some dust over here, so I can blow this off. I've got a really small point now to work with. And I can come back in that area. Hopefully you can see this. Move my light over there so you can see it a little easier. Use my hand to kind of steady myself here. Just use little tiny strokes. Okay, that's probably enough right there. All right. And now I can use, I think, probably this ivory might be a good choice here. So this will be just like a little flyaway here. Still a little bit too thick, perhaps, and or not. I mean, it's not bad. And then if I want it to be thinner, come back in there, just very carefully right beside it, and add some darker areas right there beside it. There we go. So it could be, you know, a few strands together, right? For some of the actual individual hairs, we would do that near the end, and you could actually indent the paper a little bit with like a Prismacolor Verithin or something like that. But for right now, I think that is convincing enough. Give that a little bit of context here. There we go. And maybe even remove some of that right in there. Remember, I have that white and the Naples underneath there. So it kind of helps. I can remove some of that. You see how easy that was? And come back in here. I hear some people talk about their experience on Stonehenge, and they say, well, I felt like I was fighting with the tooth the whole time. And I can understand that. It can feel like that. But it's, you know, it's not, I don't really feel like I'm fighting with it. I'm working with the tooth, which may be another way of saying I'm fighting with it. But you do work with it, and you figure out what it will take, what it will do, what it won't do as you work on it. It could be just a little bit darker, and right in here. I may have encroached a little bit too much in that little section, probably did. Think about where this started from and where it's going. So this area is coming down, headed down. This area represents a little change in direction. There we go. And then a little more of that brown ochre around there. Okay. I want to get a little more of this brown ochre in this area, and then we may we'll probably call it a night for our drawing stream. Okay, put a little bit more over here. Forgot to blow that back off. I've got a little bit of some of those erasers right in there. I don't want that. So much to do. Darken that up just a little bit because that's tucked under this other area, that other section of hair. And actually, this needs to come over this way. Okay. All right. Well, I think that we'll go ahead and stop for now. I mean, there's a lot we've got to do, I know, but I actually have a call coming up here very, very soon, and I don't want to be late for that, for something for the podcast, so I'm going to have to run, and we've got a lot of work to do on this. But I think we've made some progress, and we're getting there. We're getting close. I know it's slow. It's a very slow process, but I don't know. It's looking like blonde hair to me, so that's awesome. Well, thanks, Maria. Appreciate it, and thanks for coming over here. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for being here, and we will pick this up and start making this look more like hair and realism instead of an illustration, hopefully, on Monday. So if I don't talk to you again, have a wonderful weekend. And until then, stay sharp. Bye-bye.